This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, now we have to write about the site 2 reabsorption as to how the reabsorption happens for site 2. Okay, so take down site 2. Site 2, the luminal fluid enters the thick ascending loop of Henle. The luminal fluid enters the thick ascending loop of Henle. This part, which you can see on your screen, I am pointing it out with the help of a cursor, where number 2 is written 30% and loop of Henle is put in the box. So this is the ascending loop of Henle, and the luminal fluid or the glomerular filtrate will reach here. Where it comes in contact with tubule cells, tubule cells, tubule cells which are impermeable to water, which are impermeable to of reabsorption of sodium and have a system of reabsorption of sodium. Please mute yourself. Okay. The luminal fluid enters the thick ascending loop of Henle, where it comes in contact with tubule cells which are impermeable to water and have a system of sodium transport or reabsorption. And have a system of transport or sodium reabsorption. Leave a line, next line. They have the sodium potassium ATPase pump, sodium Na plus / K plus sodium potassium ATPase, ATP, all three capital, and after that P in small letters write ASE, ATPase, sodium potassium ATPase pump. I am locking the class. If you all leave, I am not going to let you enter again. Sodium potassium ATPase pump, which creates a deficit. You understand the meaning of deficit? Lack, okay, lacuna, which creates a deficit of sodium ions, which creates a deficit of sodium ions in the tubule, creates a deficit of sodium ions in the tubule, because of which the sodium ions will leave the luminal fluid, to move inside the tubule, Next line. Along with sodium, potassium and chloride is also co-transported. Along with sodium, potassium and chloride is also co-transported. Next line, put a star in the margin. To every write number 1, numerical number 1, to every 1 Na plus ion, comma, 1, again put numerical 1, potassium ion, and 2, put numerical 2, 2 chloride Cl minus ions are reabsorbed. I repeat, to every 1 sodium ion, 1 potassium ion and 2 chloride ions are reabsorbed. Next line. Put a star in the margin. The chloride ions enter through special chloride channels. The chloride ions enter through special chloride channels. Next line, again put star in the margin. The potassium ions which have entered along with sodium ions, the potassium ions which have entered along with sodium ions are then recycled back, into the luminal fluid. So they are just company for the sodium ion. They will come from the luminal fluid along with the sodium ion. Inside, they will leave the luminal fluid and they will come inside the tubule. Once they are inside the tubule, they will drop the sodium ion and they will go back into the luminal fluid. Okay. Now after this is site 3 and site 4. That is the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting tubule. So here it is very simple. It is not a very complicated reabsorption of sodium at site 3. So at site 3 again there is sodium potassium ATPase pump. Again there will be a deficit of sodium ions. It will be made. There will be a deficit of sodium ions, and because of this the sodium ions will be reabsorbed. Okay. Whereas in the case of site 4, that is the collecting tubule, the collecting tubule is the final site where you can reabsorb sodium. If it does not get reabsorbed here, you are going to lose the sodium in the excreted urine. Okay. So at this collecting tubule, there are 2 types of different cells which are present. One is called as the principal cells, PRINCIPLE, principal cells, and the intercalated cells. Now, the principal cells play a major role in reabsorption of sodium. Okay, and the intercalated cells are responsible for generation of hydrogen ions. So, understand the luminal fluid is in the collecting tubule. The collecting tubule has 2 different types of cells. One is the principal cells and the other is the intercalated cells. The principal cells help in sodium reabsorption. This sodium reabsorption will happen only when the intercalated cells will release the H plus ion. So again there is a give and take, like how it was there in site 1 carbonic anhydrase enzyme which was releasing H plus ion. Similarly, there is secretion or generation of H plus ion from the intercalated cells, and after this generation of the H plus ion, there will be sodium reabsorption. Okay, so the next two sites are comparatively very simpler. Take down site 3. Site 3. The distal convoluted tubule is the next major site. The distal convoluted tubule is the next major site for sodium reabsorption. Here also the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Here also the sodium potassium ATPase pump creates a deficit of sodium ions. Creates a deficit of sodium ions, resulting in sodium reabsorption. Resulting in sodium reabsorption. And last is site 4. Last is site 4. The collecting tubule is the final major site. The collecting tubule is the final major site for the reabsorption of sodium. For the reabsorption of sodium. Next line. This part of the nephron is made up of two types of cells. Principal cells, PRINCIPLE, principal cells, and intercalated cells. Principal cells and intercalated cells. The principal cells, next line. The principal cells are important for sodium reabsorption. While the intercalated cells are responsible for generation and secretion of hydrogen ions, H plus ions. Next line. The sodium potassium ATPase pump. The sodium potassium ATPase pump creates a deficit. of sodium ions. And sodium is reabsorbed by the principal cells. Sodium is reabsorbed by the principal cells. In exchange, H plus ions are generated. In exchange, H plus ions are generated. By the intercalated cells. By the intercalated cells. Okay, we'll write a small footnote for this entire process of sodium reabsorption, and then we'll move on to the classification of diuretic agents. Okay, so just write among the sites 1, 2, 3 and 4, among the sites 1, 2, 3 and 4, which are responsible for sodium reabsorption, which are responsible for sodium reabsorption. Around 60 to 65% of reabsorption will happen at site 1. Next line. When a diuretic drug which acts on site 1 is used, when a diuretic drug which acts on site 1 is used, it has the efficiency to inhibit around 25 to 30% of reabsorption. It has the efficiency to inhibit around 25 to 30% of reabsorption of sodium. Full stop. Next line. Therefore, the remaining 3 sites downstream, downstream means these 3, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule and the collecting tubule. The 3 major sites downstream can make up for this reabsorption, Leave a line. Next line. About 30% of reabsorption happens at loop of Henle. About 30% of reabsorption happens at loop of Henle. And the diuretics acting at site 2 are considered to be the most efficacious. Are considered to be the most efficacious means most effective. So if 30% of reabsorption of sodium is happening at loop of Henle, it will be able to inhibit the entire 30% at loop of Henle. So those drugs which are acting on site 2, they will be considered the most efficacious, most effective drugs. Leave a line, next line. The two sites following the site of loop of Henle, the two sites following the site of loop of Henle are less capable of sodium reabsorption. To compensate the above sites. To compensate the above sites. Next line. Therefore, a diuretic drug acting on site 1, acting on site 2, first write that, acting on site 2 and supplementary acting on site 1, acting on site 2 and supplementary acting on site 1 is the most preferred diuretic agent. Is the most preferred diuretic agent. Okay, so leave a line. Classification of diuretics. Now here the classification we are seeing on the mechanism of action. What is the site of activity of the drug? Okay, so based on their site of action, the diuretics are classified as follows. First are carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Only write the name, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Next, thiazide and thiazide-like diuretics. Thiazide and thiazide-like diuretics. Next, high ceiling diuretics or loop diuretics. High ceiling diuretics or loop diuretics. Next, osmotic diuretics. Osmotic diuretics. Last class, potassium sparing diuretics. Potassium sparing diuretics. Okay, and if you see this slide, you will see that the most weakest of the diuretics among the first three classes is the carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. Better to carbonic anhydrase inhibitor is the thiazide and thiazide-like diuretics. The strongest among the three is the loop diuretics, or which are called as high ceiling diuretics. The other two classes, osmotic and potassium sparing diuretics, are just a supplementary diuretic. Most of the times they are used in combination with the first three. Very rarely will you see that independently osmotic diuretics or potassium sparing diuretics are used as a diuretic agent. Usually they will be combined with one of these three, either carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, thiazide like diuretics, and the loop diuretics or high ceiling diuretics. Okay, so we come to the first class of diuretics, and the first class of diuretics is the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Now, if you see the structure of this carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, okay, I assume you can see on the screen. You can see this sulfanilamide. This sulfanilamide is the parent compound, okay, of your carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. This is the parent compound, and this carbonic anhydrase parent compound, that is this sulfanilamide, is mainly used as a treatment for bacterial infections. If you recollect, I don't know if you have covered this in pharmacology, you will be covering sulfonamides in the later semester. These sulfonamides or sulfonylamines, they are specifically having bacterial action. All your burn wounds, eye infections, all of them are these sulfur drugs. They can be cured with the help of these sulfur. And many of the population across the globe are allergic to these sulfur drugs. Antibacterial is being prescribed, which has to be taken orally that time, or even for that matter externally. The doctor should and must always ask whether the patient is aware of any such sulfur related allergy. There are a lot of patients across the globe which are allergic to sulfur, okay, and because it has this sulfur or sulfur, these drugs are usually yellow in color. If you remember your 7th standard, 8th standard chemistry, you know sulfur usually imparts yellow color to the substance in which it is present. Okay, so this sulfanilamide is mainly a antibacterial agent, and it has been improvised. It has undergone certain changes, two different types of changes. One is the addition of a heterocyclic sulfonamide. Okay, if you see the structure of sulfanilamide over here, I assume you are able to see the screen. This sulfanilamide has a benzene ring. Okay, so this sulfanilamide benzene ring is replaced by a heterocyclic ring in both these cases. And the replacement of this ring, the benzene ring with a heterocyclic ring, gives you heterocyclic sulfonamides and a different class of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. At the same time, you have the disulfomoyl benzene. Okay, what has happened over here? you see the benzene structure is constant. Okay, but instead of one sulfonyl group, SO2NH2, this is the sulfonyl group. Instead of one group, now in this case there are two groups. So that is why it is disulfomoyl benzene. Benzene ring and di. Di means two sulfomoyl groups attached to benzene. Okay. So how did the chemist start with the discovery of this class of agents? They first stumbled upon these sulfonylamides or sulfonamides, and like I told you, these are typical in characteristic. These sulfonylamides underwent two types of changes. One, you replace the benzene ring in sulfonylamide with a heterocyclic ring structure. Two, you add one extra SO2NH2 or the sulfomoyl group to the benzene ring. You keep the benzene ring intact. So once you add this SO2NH2 extra to the benzene ring, you get meta disulfomoyl benzenes. Okay, so these are the two classes which we have of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Has everybody understood? Yes or no? Anybody who wants me to repeat this? Okay, so I assume you all have understood. We'll move on to writing about carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Your attendance is slowly going down. You were 33 when we started, you all are 28 now. I don't know what your class is up to. Okay, take down carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. The carbonic anhydrase enzyme, the carbonic anhydrase enzyme is present at site 1. That is the proximal convoluted tubule. That is the proximal convoluted tubule. It generates the H plus ions. It generates the H plus ions which are exchanged with sodium from the luminal fluid, which are exchanged for sodium from the luminal fluid. Next line. The CA inhibitors, capital C, capital A. The CA inhibitors prevent the production of H plus ions. Thus preventing sodium along with water, sodium along with water to be reabsorbed. Causing diuresis. Leave a line. Next line. Sulfonylamides are used to treat bacterial infections. And mild diuretic activity was a side effect of it. Mild diuretic activity was a side effect of it. Full stop. This tendency of acting as a mild diuretic is through the inhibition of renal CA enzyme. Renal CA enzyme. Leave a line. From the basic sulfanilamide structure, two groups of CA inhibitors was formed. Two groups of CA inhibitors was formed. Namely, heterocyclic sulfonamides, second, meta disulfomoyl benzene sulfonamides or derivatives. Meta disulfomoyl benzene derivatives. Okay, these were the two. Both the names are there on your screen. Heterocyclic sulfonamides and meta disulfomoyl benzene derivatives. Okay, now from here we have to move on to SAR of this class. That is the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. We have to move on to the SAR. We'll quickly finish the SAR and stop because I think you have another class at 4 o'clock, isn't it? So we'll finish the SAR and we'll see the pharmacological action or mechanism of action in detail tomorrow for this class. Okay, so take down SAR of CA inhibitors. First point, sulfomoyl group is essential for CA inhibitory activity. CA inhibitory activity. Same point. It also is important for in vivo diuresis production. Next point, to retain both in vitro and in vivo. To retain both in vitro and in vivo diuretic action, the sulfamoyl nitrogen, the sulfamoyl nitrogen must remain unsubstituted full stop, put a star in the margin. This is the reason why, except for sulfonylamines, this is the reason why, except for sulfonylamines, other sulfonamides have no diuretic action, have no diuretic action. Next point, acetazolamide is a heterocyclic sulfonamide. Acetazolamide is a heterocyclic sulfonamide, comma, substitution of methyl on one of the nitrogens changes acetazolamide to metzolamide. You can see both the structures on your screen. This is sulfonylamide. Okay, here is the amine group. Here is the sulfamoyl moiety. This sulfamoyl moiety, the nitrogen is unsubstituted, only NH2. No other substitution is allowed. Any other substitution, it will lead to loss of activity. That is one of the main reasons why only sulfonylamide has been able to show this activity of diuresis. Okay, then from this we move to replace the benzene ring with a heterocyclic ring system, and we got acetazolamide. This acetazolamide has two nitrogens at this place, and one of the nitrogens, when replaced, one hydrogen replaced with methyl group, gives you metzolamide. Okay, so exactly in this way you should take down the structure. The sulfonylamide at the center page, one arrow goes up, heterocyclic sulfonamides, and from this you get one acetazolamide, you get metzolamide. Okay, this is how you should be representing the examples in this class of CA inhibitors. Okay, next, take down the moiety to which sulfamoyl group is attached. The moiety to which, be quick, only 10 minutes are left. The moiety to which the sulfamides group is attached should be aromatic. Should be aromatic. Next point. Maximal diuretic activity is seen. Maximal diuretic activity is seen when there is substitution of Cl minus, Br minus, CF3, C capital, F capital, 3 is a subscript, CF3 minus or NO2 minus. Maximal diuretic activity is seen when there is substitution of Cl minus, Br minus, CF3 minus or NO2 minus. Next point. Substitution with an amino group. Substitution with an amino group increases sal-uretic activity. Sal-uretic activity means formation of salt and excretion or diuretic activity of the salt. Salt formation and its removal. Sal-uretic activity, but has less effect on the CA enzyme, but has less effect on the CA enzyme, that is the carbonic anhydrase enzyme. And last point, replacement of SO2NH2 group with a carboxyl or a carbamoyl group. With a carboxyl or carbamoyl group increases diuretic activity. Increases diuretic activity. Okay, so these points around some 6 to 7 points are there for the SAR of CA inhibitors, the sulfonylamides, which are used as carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. These are the 4 main drugs which have been obtained from sulfonylamides. In fact, acetazolamide is the most commonly used diuretic drug which acts as a CA inhibitor on the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, after this is the mechanism of action, and then we have to move on to thiazide and thiazide-like diuretics. So tomorrow we will first see the mechanism of action of this class of CA inhibitors, and then move on to thiazide and thiazide-like diuretics. If you have any questions, please share now, or you can ask tomorrow. Then I can end the class. If you don't have any questions, we can end the class. You can move on to the next class. Shall I end the class? Okay.